All right. Welcome, everybody. We are here today. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how you could possibly use that in research settings in physical education, your day-to-day PEAT work, and talk about also how your students may or may not already be using it. So today, the presenters are me and Chad Killian. Chad has done a lot of research on online physical education and flipped learning. There's a new book out that Chad and some colleagues have written. And then my name is Risto Marttinen. I am the chair of AERA's Special Interest Group 93. So this year, our conference is in Philadelphia in April. We have an Invisible College that starts on the 10th of April on Wednesday at 8 a.m. It's an awesome session for anybody who's doing research in this field. So hopefully you can check that out. But today we've made a plan of how we're going to do this. So the first block is going to be about non-chat GPT artificial intelligence. And so I'm going to show you a couple things by sharing my screen about things not related to chat GPT. And then I'm going to turn it over to Chad, and Chad is going to show you a lot of the chat GPT add-ons. And for full disclosure, today we are talking about the paid version of chat GPT. There is a free version, but it has some limitations, like you can't drag and drop files. So what we're going to show you today is the paid version. Some of them, all of these AI things have a free version, and you can use it to a limited amount that way. But with that said, both Chad and I do pay for it, or Chad actually has his university paying for it, which is much smarter. But to me, I feel like it's some of the best $20 that I spend every single month. It's 100% worth it. And if you think about in vivo license or other licenses that you pay, or shoot, most of you probably pay $22.99 for Netflix every month. And so spending $20 to outsource your labor, not your thinking, is probably a good idea if you do it ethically. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we will start with our first piece, which is actually a way to listen to articles when you are busy. So this is the first thing that I'll share with you. And again, the chat is open. If you want to ask questions in there, engage in discussion through the chat, you are more than welcome to. But this is listening.com. I got this right when it came out. I saw it on social media and thought it was going to be really helpful for me. I did the free trial and didn't even finish the free trial before I did the paid version of it. So basically what this does is you drag and drop an article into this here, and you do it on your computer. And then, so I have an iPhone, so within like 2 minutes, it populates on your iPhone, and you can have a PDF that it reads, so it goes through the abstract and intro, but it's not a screen reader. So screen readers would say like Phillips et al. 2015, Mercier et al. 2018. So it skips out all of those citations, and it just reads it to you like it's an audiobook. So I'm sure in a year or so, the AI is going to keep improving. I use this, I run a podcast. So right before the podcast, I re-listen to the article. So it's fresh on my head while I'm like driving or walking or folding laundry or something. So I'll let you very quickly listen to what it sounds like. This is a recent one that I just recorded.
Even with the craziness, it worked. PE teachers working in and with an activist approach. Abstract. Background. As one pedagogical approach, an activist approach to teaching offers a structure for inquiry-oriented, learner-centered processes.
So you can also highlight things, and you can see here, add notes. If you're listening on your iPhone or something, all you have to do is press add note, and it takes the last 10 seconds of what was said and copies and pastes it, and you can go into it afterwards. You can queue these up. You can have like 5 in your queue, and you can select, I only want to listen to the methods and the results and the discussion. I don't want to hear the introduction or the abstract. So you can select what parts you read. So that's listening.com. Again, we are not sponsored by anything here. So we're just sharing, take it for what it's worth. So the next one that I want to share with you is Perplexity. And Perplexity is perplexity.ai. And basically, it is a different way that you would use something, for example, like Google. It's a more intuitive way to ask questions. It gives you a different type of answer. So for here, and a lot of these we've preset, so we don't have to wait for it to do this. But I asked the question, how can I incorporate pedagogical models into my physical education, teacher education curriculum? So it gives a different type of answer than Google does, right? So the answer, understanding pedagogical models, it says to familiarize yourself. These are all legitimate models that we all would agree would be pedagogical models, right? And then it gives you this number 1. And what that does, it links you to legitimate sources. So this is a peer-reviewed research paper in 2023. And then you can read the abstract about why that specific AI model has, or Perplexity has said that this is a good idea. Professional identity and clarity, models-based practice. So then I can click on this citation here. It takes me to another paper. It takes me to another paper. So these are all set. And then it also takes you into different types of websites, right? So like this is supportrealteachers.org. A lot of you probably have seen this, but it links you to Vicky Goodyear's blog. So again, this is something that I've used Vicky's blog before in my secondary methods classes when we talk about this. I think it's a really good resource. But it gives you more information. Then you can go through and say, I want to search images of this or search videos of this. But what I want to show also is how it's different to Google, right? So this is a Google search for the same thing. And the difference here is it cites the same paper, but it just gives you a link. It gives you a link. It gives you a link, right? So you can go through and basically whatever search engine optimization has given them, these are the top hits versus giving you a paragraph answer. All right. So another one, I won't spend more time on that because we got a ton. Another one is elicit. Let me pull up my elicit. I have a lot of windows open, so please be patient. Okay. So elicit is a way to do basically like literature searches. You can go into asking a specific question. So for example, let's go here. So this is what it's going to look like. You're going to put your research question in. And for me, I put in, does student attitude toward physical education decline with age? Now, I'm using an example that I feel like I kind of have an answer to, so I can double check if I know some of these authors. And this is my doctoral advisor's research area. So I can see here, it basically summarizes the research of the four top papers that it pulls. Phillips 2015, Mercier 2017. So I know like this Phillips is actually here. There is another author on this paper, but it shows 2015, 30 citations. It's got a DOI, so it has a direct link to it. You can click on here and it gives you the abstract. Okay. if I don't want that, right, I can go to the next one, Kevin Mercier, 3 others, 32 citations. But what's cool about here is it gives you the abstract summary, but you can also say, well, I want to know what the main findings are. And it gives you side-by-side examples of the main findings in here. And then you keep scrolling down. Here's a middle school perceptions paper. Here are the main findings. Maybe I want to figure out what the methodology was. And you can start adding these side-by-side columns to speed up your process. So that's illicit. And let's show you one more before we move over to CHADS, which is consensus. And what consensus is there. Okay. So consensus runs as a separate app, but ChatGPT paid version has an ability to use this app through it. So let's use for consensus the same exact thing. So we ask the same question. Does student attitude toward physical education decline with age? It takes a little bit to get started, but it gives you a more broken down answer, and then it still does cite. If you use ChatGPT itself, it may actually give you the wrong citations on this. But like I know this paper, and if I'm looking at middle school students generally have moderately positive attitudes towards PE, but these attitudes decline as students progress in grade level with higher grades showing lower mean scores. I can click on that and it takes me to consensus, which is the actual website, and then I can interact with that paper and other papers more specifically. And it gives you different links to the papers and more of like a summary. And consensus works as the name of the app is. It gives you kind of like, hey, here's what we overall know about this topic. So let me pull up the results because it's taken a little long there. Okay. So I don't have that. All right. So I think that's what I had. Oh, I had one more. So outside of the research, and we'll talk a little bit more about like how this works in teaching. But for example, the way that I made our SIG SIG schedule. So this year we have an Invisible College, and the program comes out. It's a PDF or it's online. So I'll save that as a screenshot. And so I can say for here, let's go to ChatGPT, give me a new thing. And I say, can you format this table into a Word document? And so what I show here is basically I went online and I have this. I basically screenshotted it, put this in, but I want to have it in a easy to use table. So I'm going to drop this here. So that's the file, but I want it into a Word document so I can easily download it and read it. And what the paid version of ChatGPT does is it actually does make that schedule. And I'll speed up the process because this is what it put out. And this is, if you're part of our SIG, you got an email from me this week that had this copied. So then I just went in and just deleted this column. I double checked. It gives me this April 10th. These are our sessions, and everything is correct. It just formats it into a Word document that I can download. So instead of spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes trying to figure out a table formatting, you can do that super quick. All right. So I'm going to move over to Chad. Chad's going to share his screen and show us a little bit more about different ways to use ChatGPT.
Thanks, Risto. Hey, everybody. It's good to see you. The whole time through this, just be thinking we're exporting and helping tasks become easier. We're not relying on this to think for us. It's not always correct. You saw Risto always double checking, making sure, the stuff that he's familiar with lines up, especially with citations and so forth. So always in the back of your mind, remember to filter what we get from these incredibly powerful and becoming more powerful and more awesome by the second tools. And the other thing is, we're focusing sort of on how we can use these tools to support our work, our thinking, our scholarship, and so forth. Also be thinking about how we might be able to inform students about how these could support their learning. For example, Risto, which one was it that reads your papers? The kids today aren't reading much. It's not a common menu.
Listening.io. Yep.
Yeah, so listening. I mean, that's something I'm thinking, like, if I assign a bunch of readings in sort of an advanced class, I'm going to tell the students this semester, hey, listening.com lets you upload this PDF. If you prefer listening to it, go out for a walk. You got your article in your ears that way. So we can kind of think about how we use these tools and how we might be able to support our students through the use of these tools as well. So if you can see my screen here, I think I'm just going to go through a couple different ways of using the ChatGPT 4 standard interface, which is what Risto just showed you, and then some different add-ons or different programs that are included in the premium subscription as well. And so the first one is, how can we use ChatGPT to help us develop more impactful or different discussion questions that might be embedded in our lessons right now? How can I evolve this class or level up this class, this lecture that I've given for the last 10 years? What can I do to kind of keep things fresh? So the first thing I did was I uploaded this PDF. This is O'Connor, I think Alfrey's article, Rethinking Classifications. Suppose this is an article that I assigned for reading in one of my classes. I offered this prompt. If you're on the YouTube video, you can see the prompt. If you're listening on podcast, you can go see the prompt. This is what I said, and ChatGPT outputs 10 questions based on the content from the article. So essentially it read the article, quote unquote, read the article, thought a little bit, and spit out these questions. One's on conceptual understanding, one's on social environmental dimensions, one's on participation trends. So I'm going through this as somebody teaching this class. I'm like, oh man, that's a good question. That gets me thinking. I'm going to add that to one of my slides. This one, I'm not really trying to focus on that right now. I'm not trying to focus. Inclusion and diversity, huge. Like, let's put that one in, have a good conversation about that. As I'm going through the discussion questions, like, well, how can we expand student learning? Obviously, maybe there's some homework assignments related to this that we could think about. The one that I have right now is pretty stale, so let's ask ChatGPT. So I come down here and I'm like, can you please, I always say please, it's so weird. It's like, try to be polite even to the bots. But can you provide an example of 2 homework assignments related to this content that might be enriching to students? It outputs these 2 homework assignments. You can see a reflective essay on PE curriculum reform and designing an inclusive PE lesson plan. So it comes with objective, instructions, bulleted. I can take that and use it. I can expand it. I can delete different bullet points. I can look at it and say, you know what, that's kind of above my students or below my students. Let me adjust it this way. Or I can say, I'm going to stick with what I have. But it's a resource that can kind of provide ways to refresh a class, ways to develop a class that you might just be teaching for the first time. And I find it kind of valuable for those types of things. I just asked what are some extra articles that I could assign as supplemental readings? I would have to read these articles. I think this first one could be a good one. I'm not sure how the rest of them relate, but again, this is where we use it to brainstorm, to give us ideas. We are ultimately the ones to decide whether or not to use it. So this is how to use ChatGPT, upload an article, get some discussion questions, get some homework assignments. And please stop me if you have questions. Risto, you can keep an eye on the chat or anything. If anybody raises their hand, I'm happy to kind of stop here, but raise your virtual hand if you're terrible at developing case examples. We all know the value of case examples, especially for something like a motor development learning class that I teach. So I prompt ChatGPT that I teach this class. We use Newell's model of constraints, and it pops out 3 decent case examples. I might use 1 or 2 of these as an active learning portion of 1 or 2 of my classes. So if you're terrible at case examples like I am, ask ChatGPT and it can give you some ideas. Maybe you need to add a little bit to this. Maybe you want to take some things away. Maybe there's some different things you want to play around with. Again, it gives you a foundation, some ideas to use. And I think they're pretty good, and even goes down in bullets, the different types of constraints here.
Yeah, and Chad, I totally agree with the case examples. I had a behavior management lecture this week, and I looked at it, I'm like, man, I'm talking too much. How do I break this up? Ooh, case studies.
Yep.
So I'm like, give me elementary education case studies and give me several. And I just let the students choose, and it totally got them in and spurred discussion. And I used ChatGPT to prompt them. 3 out of 5 were really good. And then a couple of them, I changed some things on to push the content that I wanted to push, but otherwise really good.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and that's something you can even do in real time. It sounds like. And again, the output depends on how you're prompting. We're all still sort of new at this. How you prompt, what you ask for will differentiate what it outputs. So if this isn't quite long enough, you could, prompt, could you add, I'd like a 500-word case example that's fairly detailed in this area, and this area, and see what happens. Okay, so you can always play around with how you're prompting. Now, there's a nice little thing with premium that up here where my mouse is, it says explore GPTs. So what I just showed you is ChatGPT, sort of the conversational bot that we've all heard about and maybe even used ourselves. There are extensions to ChatGPT, that different AI programs that ChatGPT has either developed itself that are specifically related to different tasks, or ones that are capable of integrating with a ChatGPT, probably licensing or whatever for them. So I can just scroll down here carefully. There's image generators, logo creators. So if you have a lab, you need a cool logo or a cool name for your study. If you got an NIH grant, you got to have a cool name for that. You probably use some of these ChatGPTs or whatever. Consensus is here embedded. Canva's here. Image stuff, writing help. These are all just topical. Productivity, okay, research analysis, programming, and so forth. So there's tons of different GPTs, tons of different specific topic areas that you can get help with. This one, I think, is going to be really awesome as it continues to evolve. This is a data analyst GPT that allegedly analyzes data and displays it. So just playing around with this, I took the recruitment and retention qualitative study that we did for the monograph, was that 2019, I guess, and put it in just to see what happens. Okay, so this was a qualitative paper that interviewed PEAT coordinators about recruitment in PEAT. Analyst spits this out. I asked it to visualize the main themes from this paper and practical ways to support stakeholder decision-making. So it sort of summarizes the output. And gives, since it's qualitative data, a pie chart, you know, is not the greatest thing ever, but it's one way of looking at it. Okay, it summarizes the findings percentage-wise based on what it read from, and I'd have to go back, double check this. I don't know if this is true or not, if this breakdown is right, but again, it visualizes the data. Here's some other ways of looking at it with a bar graph. So 30% said they felt responsible for it. Most of us lack time and lack training in recruitment efforts. So again, it gives nice bullet points. And this might be useful if you're looking to make a PowerPoint, if you're doing a topical, if you're doing a lecture on student attitude and physical education, you take a bunch of different papers, you plug them in, and you can get some different ways of looking at it to make it a little bit more interesting for your students. I think there's going to be value in this at some point to kind of give us alternative ways of displaying data for research papers. I don't know if it's there quite yet, but I took some quantitative data again from a different paper, the faculty work preferences paper. It doesn't extract data from PDFs well. So I had to put in the, well, I guess it did for this one, but I put in the raw Word data, and that worked out a little bit better. But you can see here, I've had to have a little conversation with it because it wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to. So that's why I put in the actual data. So I just took this from the Word document, put it in there, and it likes to put out pie charts. This is interesting enough. It gives a good summary of the different results that I asked it for. Gives some bullet points here. Tells me what else it can do, and I asked to proceed. A few errors. Now we can see academic metrics by degree level. So here's the age with the different bachelor's, master's, and doctoral institutions as part of the study that we did. What their average age is, what their workloads are, what their experience is, and you kind of go across and see that. So I think this GPT, there's still some things to be desired, but I can see and imagine a scenario where, you know, at some point we can put these in. See. Here we did a study, a geographic study, and this is physical activity opportunities by state. That's interesting to me. That looks like something that could be in a journal at some point. This is PA opportunities across 25 states, color coded. So California has the most, Minnesota has the least. If we can get that data on a map, which requires a few extra steps that I didn't complete, that's even cooler. So those are different data analysis tasks and visualization tasks that are possible. Again, not great right now, but possible to get some starts there. Any questions so far? DALL-E is a image developer. So the reason why I like using DALL-E to get images is you don't have any licensing problems. You don't have to cite, like when you see these PowerPoints with like giant citations underneath the visuals or the pictures, it gets a little cluttered. You don't have to do that with this. So if you're looking for a multi-generational play, if you're doing something on the value of lifetime physical activity through the lifespan, I just put in a couple grandparents playing pickleball with their grandchildren. Okay, not bad. I could throw those in my PowerPoint. Looks kind of nice. Wanted them to play a little bit more. That's not volleying. I don't know quite what's going on. Everybody's playing, random pickleball there. So you kind of have to prompt well and decide, but multi-generational family hiking and laughing in the woods. This is the one I love. What's the future of physical education? Okay, are we ready for this? This is what comes out. And so obviously I'm curious. I'm like, why the heck did you do that? Why did you generate those? That's creepy. And it tells you. Okay. We are all out of a job in 100 years, according to AI. Holograms will teach our children to be physically active, and that's the future we have to look forward to. Okay, so you can get pretty quick images. Did two more here. Slide Maker sounds really awesome. Isn't quite as good as I thought it would be. So I put in this prompt about, I'm doing a 2-hour professional development on the value of online learning to secondary physical education. Can you please output the slides based on these 5 articles? So I input the PDFs. They can't access the attachments. So I put in some raw text from the articles, and it downloads, it creates a PowerPoint and sends you out to this link if it works. And I think it might expire. This is how the slide maker works in any case. It gives you a link, and I will tell you it's not great. Okay. The better option if you're looking for support with PowerPoints is to use a regular ChatGPT. I used the same prompt, uploaded the same articles, which it actually did read. It summarized each article, even though I didn't ask it to do that. Thank you, ChatGPT. And then it gives you a nice outline. Okay. Doesn't give you the slides, but it gives you a good logic to potentially reference as you develop your slides. So if you have 3 or 4 readings on a topic, or if you're given a half a day professional development, you could get a good idea of a slide presentation by interacting with ChatGPT. Okay. I asked it to also include breakout sessions. So it included those. Okay. Asked it to include discussion questions, critical thinking exercises. So again, this is just a way to brainstorm, a way to develop that doesn't really outsource creativity and effort. It just gives a good logic flow. So as of now, Slide Maker, in my opinion, is terrible. It will not give you good slides. The graphics are not good, and the bullet points are very basic. This, I think, gives a little bit better
Did you
framework
on
for
the
developing.
slide maker, did you add multiple articles and ask it to do a slide, or have you tried it with one article?
I did, I think 2 when I actually did the raw task, and maybe that was the problem. It was like too much information, but it kept giving me only 12 slides. I don't know if that's, and
Default.
I asked it for more a couple times and it didn't expand. Maybe it was just like a kind of like a little glitch like you said you were experiencing with another program.
Yeah.
Just sometimes you just had to play around with it. But yeah, I wasn't impressed, to be honest. So for this one, I did ask it to, can you make it a little bit more detailed? And it comes out with a better outline down here. I asked it to expand the number of slides and add more detail, and a little bit. It did that a little bit. Okay. So that's just regular ChatGPT. And the last one I'll mention is this gym streak workout. Again, this is an extra GPT. It's an add-on. I think it comes in an app form, but it'll create a workout for you. I see this having a couple different roles in what we do, mainly as a critical reflective or reflection. If you're going to give this to students in high school, how can we prep them to use this effectively? Or is this even appropriate? So I mentioned that I live, this is me. Could you please output a week-long workout plan for me who lives in a walkable community with green space? I have access to a fitness trail. I have several good friends that live near me. I don't love to exercise, but I'm realizing the value of physical activity in my mental and physical well-being. What do you have for me? And it outputs, I think, a pretty, it's generic, but walking the dog as a physical activity for somebody who's new, including a rest day, doing some yoga, Pilates, going for a longer walk, trying out a sport, and reflecting. I think, there's some things that can be gleaned from there. There's also some things to kind of push back against. I also asked it, I work in an urban office job where I need to be at my computer most of the day. What are some manageable, cost-effective strategies I can use to reduce my sedentary behavior and integrate physical activity in my work? Now, this I think was a little bit more valuable. Obviously, again, for us, it's generic stuff that's obvious, but for other people or for new employees, this might be something that they could go to. The last one I was pretty interested in was I work as a physical education teacher, and I speak frequently with elementary classroom teachers about integrating movement into their classrooms throughout the day to help students take breaks. What are some cost-efficient movement integration strategies elementary teachers can use to help their students be more active? Be mindful these are elementary classrooms with desks and furniture. So I really tried to develop the prompt here, and it came out with, I think, some pretty creative ideas. Because of the limitations in our PETE curriculum, I think this right here shows value to working PE teachers. We talk all this time about comprehensive school physical activity programs and physical activity leadership, but we don't have a lot of time to help our students, our PETE students, develop an understanding of maybe during school day physical activity beyond PE and recess. This can help extend some of their ideas and their creative thinking. This is a tool in their toolbox they can give to classroom teachers as the physical educator on site to really help their faculty and their colleagues integrate movement across the school day. So went through ChatGPT with homework and discussion, good for case examples, data analysis, I think we'll see get a little bit better. Dolly's good right now for different non-licensed pictures. Slide Maker's terrible, in my opinion. Great for outlines. The regular ChatGPT is great for PowerPoint outlines, and this gym streak, I think, could play a role as just like a tool in the toolbox. And anybody out there on the job market or looking for a raise or doc students, I think this is a cool one. There is a negotiator that gives you strategies to negotiate. It will actually role play negotiation with you. If you get that job, you can kind of go through it. So I think that's another cool one, just a kind of FYI for everybody here.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. So in this kind of now we're in our third block. And again, if you have questions or comments or anything, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll open it up for discussion after this third block. But this one, we're going to talk about a little bit about how your students may be using or are attempted to use ChatGPT. If you are teaching in higher education, you probably already have gotten some ChatGPT stuff in, but this is a way, right? So I put in a sample paper. So I said, I've attached a paper here, literally drag and drop the paper. Can you correct any spelling and grammatical errors on this paper and also help me fix any APA citation issues and align the headings as per APA? When you're done, please provide me with a Word document that I can download. So to me, the downloadable fixed copy is like really cool. And I did this yesterday as prep, so we wouldn't have all these speed bumps. And what it did, so this is, I'll show you the Word document. Right, so this is the paper 3, and this is the paper that I put in. So it has the headings. You can see here that there are issues, right? That they are words that should be capitalized that aren't. So I'm asking ChatGPT to fix it. And when it does, it says there's some APA citation stuff. Your document's headings will be adjusted, spelling and grammar, general formatting, and it has an error. And then it goes back and does it again. And then it gives me this sample APA paper. And so this is the corrected sample that I downloaded, but it still has the same errors. So for whatever reason, it just could not figure it out today. But if you were here yesterday, then you would have seen that it actually did fix it. And it changed, like literally changed the writing of it fairly significantly, right? It gave me a completely different wording. So I'll try to put it side by side, and hopefully your screen is not too small. So they went to here. So this is the original. Knowing there are changes being made and accepting everyone from different cultures and backgrounds is amazing. Not great sentence. Knowing the changes being made and accepting everyone from different cultures and backgrounds is impressive. So it's changing a little bit of the actual wording here. It says it fixed my headings, but it definitely did not. It just bolded some things, and APA should not have different colors. And it's kind of a little lost here, but the writing is much, much better. And for whatever reason, it just could not do it. It could not do it today. So there are some issues. So I kept asking for it. It told me where, there are issues with subject verb agreement and punctuation errors. And I told him, well, figure out where it is and tell me. And for whatever reason, it just would not do it.
You weren't being polite enough, Risto.
I know. I have heard you're supposed to say please. So when the computers take over, they remember that you are at least nice to them. So I do that as well. So here is my writing intensive class. I ask them to write 1 page on, I give them a bunch of readings. They get to choose what they want to write about. And I think it's about 400 words, 500 words that they're putting on a paper. And I say summarize it in 2 sentences because I don't want the summary. And I've changed this because they can ask for a summary from ChatGPT. So I just say summarize the paper in 2 sentences, then talk about what you learned from the reading, and then how is this going to make you a more socially sensitive physical educator? So I crafted this prompt, and I'm now using Write for Me, which is a ChatGPT subcategory, another GPT under the paid version. I drag and drop chapter 2 from Oliver and Kirk's book from Routledge, and I drag and drop it, and it's a review of gender and physical education. And I say I'm a 22-year-old pre-service physical education teacher, and I say what it does, and honestly, like if you look at this, it's really good, but like the article delves into the persistent narrative surrounding girls' participation in physical education, examining the influence of societal norms, educational practices, and media portrayal of their engagement and attitude toward physical activity. My 22-year-old pre-service physical education teacher is not writing that sentence. It is really good, but they're just not in this writing intensive class. Most of them are not writing like that. But if I were to get this, it would be really hard for me to say that somebody used ChatGPT and they could copy and paste this, double space it, and they're done. So that's the scary part. And if it says it's too much like an AI, there's another ChatGPT that says humanize it, and it writes you just copy paste this and put it into make it sound like a human wrote this, and there's another one for that. So the last one, and then we'll get into a little bit of a discussion, is asking it to write lesson plans. Okay. We did a similar presentation at ICEP in Chile last summer, and it was okay. But I think it also depends on how you write these prompts, and that's a huge part of using this. So I said, can you write me a physical education lesson plan using the Shape America standard, which is going to be defunct in 2 months or 1 month. Standard 1, E27. So I said for grade 2, which is jumps a self-turned rope consecutively forward and backward with a mature pattern. Said, please plan for a 30-minute lesson, 25 students in the class, and enough equipment for each student to have a jump rope. I also want to start the class with an instant activity. So it repeats it. It gives me an objective, what the equipment is, what the activity is. It's a freeze jump, right? Maybe fine, maybe not, right? But then it says explain the goal. It gives you description and objectives. 7 minutes for skill development, jump rope basics, forward to backward jumps, a challenge in the game, jump the river. Like that's something that people who teach jump rope but probably taught. And the cool down, it gives me an assessment, adaptations, modifications, safety considerations. And then I said, well, in my class, I need the critical elements and cues. So it gives me critical elements and cues, maybe not the number that you want students to have, but it gives you pretty good cues throughout. So it has the ability to, if you think about starting with nothing, right? It gives you something. And again, if you were to put this into a format, I don't know, you probably get a B at least, right? So it's something. And we've had this conversation about is it worth doing this for a person who isn't going to lesson plan at all? Is this better than the person who never lesson plans? At least they ask it and they have something that they're following. So we're actually supposed to get into this at 3:50. So we're a minute off, and I'm just absolutely astounded that this has actually worked as we had planned. Hopefully this has been something that's been helpful for you. But we want to open this up for a discussion. Whether you've used this, you have something to share. How do we support our students' use of this? Do we teach them how to use this for lesson planning because we know that they're gonna, or some of them are gonna do it anyway? Honestly, like for my writing intensive course, I'm down to the honor code. Like that's it. I hope you write your own stuff because that's what you should be doing. But I have no way of knowing. There's no check on it that's accurate. And also about the ethics of this and research. So I'd love for you all to chime in if you have any comments. Or maybe we put you all to sleep. Could be possible.
I'll chime in. Hi, I'm Steve Palmer at NAU. Great resources. Thanks for sharing. Students, pre-service teachers coming up with any kind of quality content is a challenge. So let's let it rip. I like the idea of having them do this because there's a difference between getting quality content on paper and then developing your extensions in ways to really differentiate instruction and actually use that content. It is a really much different than looking through books and getting tasks and ideas and things like that. So I love these resources. Let's use them. And then if that puts them a step ahead to present better lessons and better differentiate instruction, why not? I love this.
Yeah. And what's the difference between going to PE Central and taking a lesson plan and then modifying it? They're already doing it, and we tell them like you should go to PE Central, you should go to Open Phys Ed, you should go to these resources, and then you don't have to recreate the wheel. But I think there is a stigma around this. They're like, well, no, we can't use ChatGPT for this.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of it too, granted, you can look at our data. We don't necessarily always get the best writers. So some of our students that maybe struggle, they have learning disabilities. I just had a student the other day who you could tell she had the right content down, but I said, go put it in and have your, your letter corrected using ChatGPT or some other AI source. So that, it's, double check it, but she's got the ideas because she's gonna have to send letters home to parents and things like that. Correct it, use these tools to communicate more clearly.
Yeah. Or an international student. If you have an
Absolutely.
international student that, I don't know, they're an exchange student from Germany and they come here and their English is pretty good, right? But it's not perfect. But they know physical education, they know the content, they just can't use the right grammar, whatever it is, to get their point across. We say, hey, download Grammarly, right? And use Grammarly, which is partially AI. But then is it okay for us to say, we'll run this through ChatGPT and fix the errors, change the writing? Where's that line?
Absolutely agreed. And have any of you, sorry, I didn't see it earlier, but oh gosh, what is it? Magic School AI too? I don't know, have you all seen that one? That's a really
No.
good one for lesson planning. It turns out some good ideas as well.
I'm gonna write that down. Corey.
Hey, thanks for having us. It's been a really good presentation so far. I'm learning a lot. My thought is, or my concern is, I do think ChatGPT has been and will be very useful for professionals and students alike. My concern is, though, thinking about this in the way that we're thinking about it, is this wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. And so I think ChatGPT is useful for us because it's helping us do things that we already know how to do. My concern for our students and future generations is that they would have essentially learned how to utilize a platform to do things that they didn't learn how to do themselves, and the issues that that may create. And I don't want to sound obsolete, because I can imagine 20, 30, 40 years ago that, well, if you didn't have Google Scholar, how would you do it? But it's like, but we do. It's a common thing now. Or our math teachers who would tell us, well, you're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket in the future, but it's like, now we are. And so, I'm not saying that that at a certain point this won't make more sense, but at the time, I feel like the concern for me is for our students particularly, that they'll learn how to utilize the platform for things that they never learned how to do without the platform, and then that could potentially cause them issues. Even if ChatGPT in 5 years said, you know what, there's going to be a $50 paywall, there is no free option, then what? Then what will our students do, especially for those who didn't learn skills in replacement of the technology?
Yeah, I think you bring up a super, super important point in how we address this as educators, right? And it's like you should, and people have said this, it's not my quote, but you should outsource your labor and not your thinking, right? If you outsource your labor, so if it's writing a letter of recommendation that's going to take you 30, 40 minutes to write really well, can you put the bullet points in about this person and say, write a letter of recommendation for me? And then you edit it and you are still writing that. It's the same thing for lesson plans. Like, it would be really bad for us to say to a brand new student who doesn't know much about physical education, to say, hey, just go to ChatGPT and write your objectives that way and then edit them. Like, they have to learn how to write an objective for it to be actually editable later on. Chad?
To your point, to that point that Corey was making, I think a good way to approach this is just to be transparent about the cost benefit, or the what we lose by interacting with ChatGPT. I said the word brainstorming a lot. But do we want our kids brainstorming, or do we want ourselves brainstorming with our screen? Or do I want to call up my friend Risto, or call up, another person, be like, hey man, I got this really good idea. What do you think about this? Which is better? At least in my mind, 100% of the time is having beer with friends and brainstorming with humans, or calling up somebody that you can talk to about a new idea versus interacting. Now that's different than, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, getting ready for a new discussion question Wednesday. Everybody would prefer just to use the ChatGPT and not be called at that time. But there is something dehumanizing about just being on a computer all day. Like I think we all feel it, like if not physically, just like spiritually, like having those types of conversations are healthy. Like, do we want to just listen to everything? Do we want the chat GPT to summarize everything for us? Like I'm here talking about chat GPT and like I don't use it. I read because I don't want to like sell my soul to the bots, you know, to be not to be extreme or anything, but like I think we need to help our kids understand, yeah, like when we prioritize efficiency, we sometimes lose something as a result. I think that's kind of what you were saying, Aaron. Like we still need to have teaching skills and content knowledge. It's to your point, Risto, about outsourcing labor, not thinking like that. I think needs to be at the forefront of all these conversations. Yeah, you can get your assignment done quickly, but at what cost? And then in that moment, there's a cost, but then what over time, how much skill, how much knowledge, how much human interaction are you missing by relying almost exclusively on this computer? I think these are good points to consider having conversations about.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that there is that, like, especially in writing or thinking about something new, like talk to a colleague and talk to a human. Like, hey, I'm thinking about like this assignment is really stale. Do you think this would be a good way? Like, go to the expert in the field that's your colleague and ask them. I recently had this question. I have this couple people who I text like Pete questions to, and we're all on the same text message chain. And I have this question, and I just don't know, but one of the three is probably reading that text message at some point, so I'll get some sort of response. But it was about a reviewer comment that I just couldn't. I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't want to dismiss it entirely, but also I want to dismiss it entirely. And so I asked the question to my chat group. And as I was waiting, I was like, I'm just going to ask ChatGPT, like, how would you address this reviewer comment without sounding rude and saying that this isn't actually important? And it gave me a fantastic answer. It was like 4 paragraphs. And then I was like, oh, well, no, that is exactly how I like. Some part of that was like, I feel this is how I'm going to answer it. And then coming back, I pasted it into that friend chat group, and they're like, oh, that's actually really intuitive. Like, that's really good. So I do agree. I think I mean, we're all on Zoom. Most people are just kind of hanging out, listening in. Like, this is the reality of our future now. Like, we are always on our computer. So so are there any other comments or ways that you feel like this could be used? We planned on going to 4:15 Eastern, so another 15 minutes. So we have some time. There's some prompts or something that you're interested in hearing different or seeing something run on ChatGPT in the paid version. You can put that in the chat.
I just thought of a new one I forgot to mention is help with tweeting. I just put in, my article was just published. Please output a high impact tweet I can share with my academic followers. And I attached the article and it read, and it came out with a nice tweet. Because if you're anything like me, you sit in front of your email or your Twitter for like a half hour deciding what to write. So that's another way, if you have a nice, if you publish something and you want a good tweet, throw it in ChatGPT and see what happens.
See, it streamlines your social media content. Awesome. So we're going to put into the chat a few of these Twitter people. So that first one, Mushtaq Bilal, he is the person that I feel like I get the most. That's where I saw listening.com. That's how I learned about Elicit. That's how I learned about ChatGPT, adding all of these different different settings that it had. And so he's a really good follow. He posts a lot about how to use it ethically in academia and in research. So there's a ton on there. But I think people are taking off. So unless, or actually, why don't we do this? When we close out the meeting, I'll stop the recording, and if people want to stick around, then we can chat. So thanks, Chad, for being the co-presenter and helping out. And thanks everybody for coming in. And if you're still, if you're looking, there is the conference, AERA Philadelphia in April 10th to the 13th. And then we have our 2025 conference in Denver, and those abstracts, 2,000-word abstracts, are due in July. So that's all we got. So let me stop the recording.